Welcome to the Lawyer Life Podcast, where the personal, professional, and political intersect. Each week, we discuss a topic to help ourselves and other lawyers navigate our days with a little less stress and ideally a lot more fulfillment. On today's episode, we talk getting out of our own way. We're asking ourselves, are our greatest strengths also the source of our biggest weaknesses? I'm Mike Anderson.
And I'm Darlene Tonelli.
Darlene, hello.
Hello. How are you?
I am well. We're on a bi-weekly schedule now.
Yes. Testing.
But for the fact that we actually work together on almost a daily basis, we wouldn't have talked for almost 2 weeks, which is long for us.
Yeah, I did miss the podcast last week. I certainly felt like there were all these extra thoughts about how to navigate our day with a little less stress that I had nowhere to put. So I'm glad we're going to jam them all into today's episode, maybe.
Well, I look forward to getting twice the enlightenment value from you today, and I'll hold you to that.
Oh my gosh.
Standard.
Wow. Well, I'll at least say those thoughts for what they're worth.
But before we get into all the enlightenment, what's going on with you? How was your 2 weeks?
This has been a great lawyerly 2 weeks, and I'm going to make a comment that I think most lawyers can relate to, which is when I had more time without the episode last week, I jammed it full of lawyerly work and did a lot more just strategy things, the things that maybe not the pressing client work, because that gets done regardless. But then there's this other layer of work that is to improve the business or improve systems. I always try to do that, and if I get free time, that's how I use it these days. And I'm privileged to say that I really enjoyed it, and I enjoy that level. And my way of working is to kind of, I don't know, I have these very energetic times, and this is certainly one of them. How about you? What did you do with your extra time?
The same. I mean, I used it productively as well, and I'll get to today perhaps my over obsession with using time productively. But yeah, it was a Friday morning that I was able to spend a few hours on a client file that were. I was able to turn something out a bit earlier than I otherwise would have, and it was great and set off my weekend well. So that was last Friday, and it's been a good week. The weather is, we say this all the time, slowly turning from cold into nice. It's jacket weather, which is good, and the sun is shining, which is great. And the ferns are coming up, which I'm pumped about. Love my ferns.
Well, and as we learned on the last episode, you can look at your ferns day or night because of your patio light. I feel like I have an insight into the Anderson backyard after last week.
Yeah, we have a new patio light and a new table that I put together, or I created. So, oh man, the progress is exciting. We're very pumped to spend time outdoors this summer. Anywho, yeah. So I've been, this all kind of ladders up to stuff. So the topic today we're talking about getting out of our own way, and I suppose what is tangled up in that is that like we are the people we are with our inherent abilities and biases and knowledge and all these things. And sometimes the people that we are allow us to do great things or get to a certain place we want to go. But then also, baked into our characters and our abilities are, flaws or things that we overdo or things that we push too far or think about too much. And so what we're talking about today is what are those things often for people? And then also how can we avoid the pitfalls that those things kind of bring along? Fair?
Fair. Yep. And we should say too, that we had some feedback from a podcast listener that wanted to hear this topic. And I think I would just say, if anyone has topics that they want to hear about, we're open to it.
So yeah, I suppose that my obsession with our outdoors is an interesting place for me to start, because now that the days are longer and the light lasts for more time, I feel like I can sneak in. That gives me this window of productivity that I otherwise didn't have. And so what I find now is like, we'll put our daughter down and it's like maybe about 20 minutes to a half hour of light still available outside. And then I'll just try to gobble that up and apply it to some sort of project that's been sitting on my list, which is like good to get stuff done. And now we have a new table outside and a light and whatever. But also, I suppose that time is useful for me to like try to relax after a pretty full day, which I avoid doing when I'm. And I think that that's part of the strength. I love to be productive. I love to see progress. But I do know that sometimes it leads me to kind of continue to work or push for that productivity in places I should otherwise probably just chill out.
Right. I think that's a really common thing in our world. I think there's this very odd thing. I was speaking with someone earlier today that said, as a summer student, because all of the law students have started their summer roles, if that's what they're doing. And I can remember to my core how it felt to be sitting there and thinking, now is when I get to work, like till all hours of the day to show what a keen law student I am. I don't know that that happens in every profession. I guess probably it does to some level, but I feel like in ours, we really value this idea that every minute should be spent on
Yeah.
some sort of work related idea. And obviously, we're trying on this podcast to help ourselves deal with that. I mean, I struggle with it still, as I said, and it sounds like you do too, even though we're trying to do a lifestyle, a practice that puts our lifestyle in there. And so you are taking the same impulse to work, and you're doing it in the yard instead, which I don't know. I wonder.
Yeah. I mean, the profession, you talk about that student that's just starting out, or now, me, so I've transitioned in the past year from being in-house to working in a situation where my time is at least I have to track my time more. So, I mean, we have flexible arrangements, so not everything is a billed hour. But, I feel for that student, and for me, kind of in this newer context, the focus on time, I think easily transfers to personal life. And so, avoiding that, I would say avoiding the impulse to try to still plug time full of productivity in your personal life or at home is try to fight that impulse. But as well, I suppose that what I need to be doing is valuing maybe rest is productive,
Right.
and trying to reorient that piece.
Well, something else that comes to mind actually as you're talking is that one thing I've noticed, and it will go to what I need to do to get out of my own way. But when I'm hearing your story, the truth is that actually it is a little bit different to be fixing something in the yard as part of your to-do list, because it is a different way of interacting. Like you're using your hands, probably, or maybe
Correct.
it's mentally taxing, but I probably not. It's just switching gears a little,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so we talked about that on an episode way back when, where we were talking about this idea of oscillating your tasks to stay at a more calm
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
level in your day.
Yeah, and so there's a good article on this topic by actually a Hollywood screenwriter named Dennis Palumbo. It's in Psychology Today, and we'll link to it in our notes. He makes a good point, which I'll bring back to your issue and mine, I guess, as well, is that who we are allows us to do the work we do. So for his example of being a creative, taking all of his quote unquote stuff, his hopes, fears, the things he loves, the things he has fantasies about, taking all that and putting it into something allows him to write a script, right?
Mm-hmm.
He needs himself in that to do his work, but also, his stuff can get in the way. And so it's in his view, a paradox of like, how can I inject the good elements of me while also kind of taking away the stuff that gets in the way, and acknowledging which is what's helpful and what is not.
What is it that's driving me to go out into the yard right now and check on the ferns? Like, what is it? It's an actual legitimate question, but like, what is it just that the story goes that the to-do list must get done today? Or is it the story that there's too much to do, I can't possibly take a break? Or like, what is the calculus? And I'll think through my own for the admin stuff in a second.
So I have to answer the question. Oh man, this is tough.
I think it is tough. I think it's like, that's why I'm asking the question, because I think we all just do.
Yeah.
And it's just a habit, but it's like, well, why? What happened in
I
that moment?
think that I come from a long line, like most notably my parents, of people who care a lot.
Hmm.
So in actual fact, like the reason why I want to get the table done and the light up and make sure the lawn's cool, and by planting that like special clover that I planted and all that, is because I want my family to have a nice place for the summer, right? And I want there to be grass down so my daughter can run around and not get filthy and enjoy herself. Like,
Right.
and so then, then it becomes an obsession. And truthfully, maybe not obsession, that's a strong word, but it becomes something I care a lot about. And then it is a paradox, because perhaps what I'm doing by trying to get all that stuff done is actually literally pulling me away from time that I otherwise, could spend with the people I'm trying to serve. So yeah, I think that it's an important, that's an important step. It's like understanding the underlying motivation, like what's driving you to act in a certain way, and then how can you use that productively, or how can you use that positively without going too far. I mean, everything, the mean between extremes is always the thing to aim for, I suppose.
Well, as I hear you say that, I'm wondering if your parents and maybe you are the people who have like the nicely, perfectly mowed lawn on the street where they're the diagonal stripes. Is that you? You don't have
My
actually.
dad is a diagonal stripe
Oh,
person.
your dad and my dad need to hang
Totally,
out.
good call.
I'm telling you, this is where this comes from. We had, and like my dad had our house always in perfect order. And that lawn, man, that lawn was a sight to behold. And I grew up like that, and I think it's interesting because you've just basically described that. And it sets a standard.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's probably more about the terrible state of my lawn generally. But my goal isn't even diagonal lines; it's literal coverage of the dirt. So,
Right.
so maybe at some point I'll get obsessed with its aesthetic, but I'm still focused on the utility. But there, yeah, I mean the point. I still take the point well, for
Well,
sure.
counterpoint is in my world, when I was a kid, I just had this, like, similar to you, I guess. My parents were very, things got done properly. Everything had a place for everything, everything in its place. Maybe your parents are coming soon to your house. You don't want them to think you don't have it all together. And lawn is a sign. I mean, there's a whole bunch of interesting things here that start to come up when you look at these little clues. You're thinking about your clover differently now. You're like, why am I planting the clover?
No, I'm still as passionate. The clover is bottom line necessary. I will be not convinced otherwise. It totally is. You should, otherwise, it's a mud pit, and
The clover is
that's not good
bottom
for
line
anybody.
necessary. That's amazing. That's so
Yeah,
amazing.
that's I am not questioning that at all.
But the thing is, too, like, these aren't bad things that we're talking about. I think that getting out of your own way also can be things like, it's kind of looking at just the, not the facts, like kind of the facts, just like the reality of the situation, and being, realizing you're an agent in that situation, and you can put it into the direction you want it to go, or you can be kind of beholden to some old story. I mean, for me, it was quite, back to the lawn example. I mean, my dad would laugh at this comment, but it was, and he wouldn't agree, frankly. He would think that the lawn should be in much better shape than it is at my house. But I just kind of realized that my dad took a lot of joy in maintaining the lawn. It was something he liked doing. He came home from work at a reasonable hour. It was just a part of his life. He enjoyed being outside, and I don't enjoy having any contact with the lawn. I feel thankful to have a lawn, but that's about where it is. I mean, I don't know. I don't take any real joy from it, but there are lots of other things that I do find joy in, and I feel really lucky that I run a business that I take joy in. And if I didn't, I would be looking for things outside work that would really give me joy, instead of adding to my to-do list outside work with things that also didn't bring me joy. I mean, we only have so many hours in the day. We got to be working on stuff that matters to us. That's kind of the thing that I always think about. That's like,
Yeah,
that's the songbook of inter alia and Darlene that I sing a fair bit. So what is our conclusion, Mike, king of summaries?
I feel like I'm as much it's hard for me. So I suppose for myself, because really what we're seeing obviously in today's episode is that, we're just trying to process this stuff
Mhm.
as well is to understand times where it does seem like we're fighting ourselves. To understand the motivation behind that, what's causing that, and methods to avoid those conflicts with ourselves. To always make sure that we're, pursuing the things that we enjoy and that we're good at, and trying to avoid the things that cause negativity.
And maybe just when we're facing a stressful situation, realize how much of the stress is being totally self-imposed, perhaps. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of another takeaway, is just what piece of this is just me and my thoughts and my patterns and my habits versus what is real, like actually happening here, separate from
Right.
fears or whatever. And I think that's a huge task for so many people, and maybe a lifelong task, but it does get better. I mean, I feel like it's less of a struggle than it once was. And I think it's important to just ask the questions. It's really good to have this level of examination, I think.
I would concur.
Obviously, you will.
Even, what's
Well,
that?
you will concur because we do a podcast discussing how to live a more examined life. Um, but
Right.
yeah,
I have an interest.
yes,
Yeah.
we are in this. We're in this. This is an important thing to examine.
Cool. Agreed. So let's now take a break, as I need to do more often. And we will come back with our goods and grapes.
Okay.
The Lawyer Life podcast is brought to you by Inter Alia Law, experienced legal counsel when and where you need us. To learn more about Inter Alia, visit the website. That's spelled INTERALIA-law.com. Thank you. And we are back with our goods and grapes. Goods are things we want to promote and support. Grapes are things that annoy us. Darlene.
How about if I start with a good, and then I think my good is I've had a lot of occasions this past week to remember how great my law school friends are. And this goes back a long time, but yeah, I mean, I'm getting to the point where I've got some friends that I went to school with that are just doing such interesting things. And this past week, I had an experience of working on a file with someone that I really trusted this person being involved. And I just realized that those friendships, some of them were just built on extremely solid foundations. And it's important. It's different than just referring to someone who appears to do the thing from the website. When you actually get to work with someone that you go way back with, I thought that was a really big highlight of the week. And I'm also just getting through the podcast back in touch with what some of my friends who are in cities far away or doing really different things in law, what they're up against and some of their ideas. And it's just an interesting time, and I'm really grateful for that. That was the number one best thing about law school for me. The group, the friends, the people. And I mean, pretty much, I mean, everyone in our class. Like, it was just a really, really great group. Anyway, that's my good.
That's a great good. It's so did you know, related, that so Adam Sandler hosted SNL last weekend? And that was the first time he's hosted since he was a cast member. And I saw Jimmy Fallon speak about it. And Fallon said that it really, with Sandler being back, and Sandler did a tribute to Chris Farley, which apparently everybody backstage was tearing up over. And he made the point that, SNL cast members, I think this applies to law school context as well, that they forget that there's a type of familial aspect to going through something like that together.
Yes.
And that there are certain like moments where you're reminded of that. And that was one for the SNL family on the weekend when Sandler was there. And I think that, there are times that when you are, I spoke to, one of my good friends that I articled with this week as well. And there's that, as you said, great foundation. It's 3 years that you spend with each other, high stress times, long hours, and so on. You really get to know somebody in those situations and build really deep relationships. And so, another example of, trying times and difficult times, there's good stuff that comes out of them. My good, so I live in the municipality of Hamilton, Ontario, as we've talked about before, and have just had a great couple weeks in the city and the small part of it that I live in as well. It's a real privilege to love the place that you live in, and my good is where I live. I feel very grateful, and especially now working from home more often, and being able to interact with the folks in the neighborhood and the community, more so. It's an incredible thing, especially in the state that the world is in today, to live in a spot. I think, like, generally, Ontario, Canada, the Western world, largely, there's never been a better time to live ever.
Right.
And so I just think we need to step back and appreciate that it's the privilege and the luxuries that we have are historically incredible. So, I mean, it's too big. Wow. But anyway, I've had a great week in the
That's
town.
a big good. You've gone from tiny petty grape to huge global consciousness raising good.
That's right.
I love it. That's great.
There
That's
it is.
Great.
Bam.
I've got a little grape. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's. I've sort of talked about this before on a podcast, but I have a friend who's a lawyer who is founding a creative business right now. And I just saw something on LinkedIn that suggested that he's getting questions about the business, like what's your differentiator in your product and stuff. And I just thought, let's not do that to people who are taking the courageous step to try something new. I've really welcomed the fact that the majority of people giving us feedback, for example, on the podcast, have been really, really charitable and, saying that they, giving us really good feedback and giving us suggestions, and just generally people appreciate that when you're trying something that's really out there, that there is some courage and there is some vulnerability in that. And I really, we issue spot for a living, but I would love it if we could just get into a culture of like, hey, that's amazing. You're starting a creative business. What's that about for you? Tell me more about it. What's the hardest thing about that? That's so courageous. Not so much like, well, I've identified 3 problems with your business proposition. Like, maybe if they ask you, right, can you identify 3 problems with my business proposition? But there's just something about supporting something like that just takes a lot of courage. And I would love it if we could just be not Pollyanna, it doesn't mean you have to tell them things that aren't true or say, things for the sake of it, but just acknowledge or honor, I guess, maybe what they're doing somehow. Whether you would do it or make that choice for yourself doesn't matter. Anyway, I guess it's a gripe, but wouldn't it be good if it was the opposite? Wouldn't that be great?
That's generally all gripes would be great if they were like when I griped my always go-to gripe when I griped about my toaster wasn't working. Wouldn't it be great if my toaster was working?
Yeah, I know. That would be so great. I hope your toaster's working now because you've been doing a blitz of things around your house.
Yeah, it's been a long time. But to that point, putting yourself out there is a very difficult thing to do. For a brief period of time, I wrote articles for the Huffington Post Canada when I was a law student. And there was nothing, I still haven't done anything that has been more scary to me than putting out my views and opinions and thoughts in writing to the masses. And luckily that went fine enough. On that note, though, we are supporting somebody who's done something like that. We'll have a bonus episode coming up in the next week or two from a friend of mine from undergrad, speaking of familial relationships, David Musgrop, who's wrote a book called Too Dumb for Democracy, ? And it's basically about how we can, the state of democracy in Canada and the United States and the UK to a degree as well. And how can we make sure that we are, keeping that pillar of our society strong. And it's a great conversation. And we'll have that up as just kind of a bonus in between our regular episodes.
Our first foray into a bona fide political chat, I would say, right? I mean, there's more to it, but it's more along the lines of political discussion and things that we think will be of interest to other lawyers who started maybe with an arts background and went into law school and still are engaged in politics in the world and thinking. So we'll see. I enjoyed it.
And if you just worked one of those 12 or 15-hour days that Darlene referenced earlier, probably wait for the next day to listen to this one because it is heady. It's a thinker.
It's a thinker. Yeah. It was. I mean, the topic is a big one, right? As the future of democracy. I mean, this is not a small topic, but it was really fascinating to hear, and I think people will find it interesting. But yes, it's a departure from what we normally do.
He's good at dumbing down his incredible intellect as well, so he does a great job. Okay, so I suppose that's all. Thanks for the chat, Darlene.
Yes, thank you. We'll talk soon.
Okay, and we'll talk soon. That's it for this week's episode of LLP. Thanks to Inter Alia Law for presenting the podcast and to Nick Fowler for composing and performing our music. See our show notes for his website. Don't forget, we love feedback. Please comment in the review section or subscribe or like. We'd appreciate it greatly. That's it. Talk soon.